I had just returned home from one of my night 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. shifts at the hospital. And my head ached slightly due to the long sleepless night I had. I had worked more because a coworker had called in just in the nick of time to report his unavailability for the night shift, and it left us short a pair of hands. I had just one thing on my mind that day, and that was to sleep all day. The only problem with that plan was that I had promised to go with Nora, my girlfriend, to see how her aunt was doing. Her aunt had been diagnosed with cancer and was receiving treatment at home. Nora went to see her most of the time, and when necessary, they came to the hospital where I worked. I felt it affected Nora's mental health, since that was her favorite aunt, and she was the closest to her aside from her aunt's visiting maid. So, whenever she requested, I let her have some space. She'd tell me she wanted some nights to herself to clear her head, and I would willingly oblige. Sometimes 4 nights a week. During those moments, we wouldn't call each other's line because what's the point of staying away from each other only to spend time on the phone? Although it really wasn't helping our relationship by shutting down communications, I had no other option. Since Nora's sleep always seemed disturbed by my arrival at a few minutes past 6 in the morning, I had taken one of the keys to the back door from its bunch which lay on the kitchen counter. This was to let me slip into the house and not disturb her sleep. For the record, I live in a housing estate, with no fence and all that. Just the lawns around the building and the asphalt roads separate one building from another on all 4 sides. I parked in the front driveway since my garage and basement were about to undergo construction. As I walked to the back of the building, I was urged to notice that a car had driven right into the lawn behind the house. I wondered how anyone on earth could be so insensitive to veer off the tarred driveway right into the grass and even up close to the building. First I inserted the key into the lock and turned, but it wouldn't budge. This only indicated that there was another key in the keyhole on the other side. It was strange, we hardly ever used the back door. If there's a key on the other side, it's possible the door is open, I said to myself to my surprise as I pulled the handle. The door went wide open. Why would Nora want to take the back door for any reason? I heard myself asking. Could there have been a visitor? The only person I knew who might stop by was her brother Drake. He worked with a civil construction firm and he was the one who I contracted to a super cement, but Drake wouldn't drive up my backyard, let alone get into we house through the back door. I shook it off my mind and silently closed the door so as not to awaken Nora, who definitely would be sleeping by that time. But I was in for another surprise. By muscle memory, I picked a strong familiar scent in the kitchen. It was the cologne of someone I knew, Frank, my coworker who had been absent. The scents got stronger as I made my way through to the staircase and eventually upstairs. But it had to be my mind playing a trick on me. It was practically impossible for Frank to be at my house while we were supposed to be at work together. It was impossible. He was a good guy and I knew his girlfriend. In fact, he had only been to my house once before and that was ever a year ago. I also was not sure if he was really close enough to Nora to want to stop by my house. And if there was an emergency, I knew who Nora would call. Yes, they had met a few times when Nora brought her aunt to the hospital, but that was normal. I imagined for the first time in my life that Nora could be cheating on me, but I quickly shook off the thoughts. As I made my way to the bedroom door, all I wanted to do was sneak into bed and have a full day off. But as I got closer, I could hear the water running in the bathroom. Nora was bathing. Nothing too strange, but wasn't it too early for that? At least for the Nora I knew. I knew she'd be surprised to see me in the bedroom because I had a tradition of buzzing the front doorbell while she trudged her way downstairs, heavy with sleep, to get the door. While a part of me wanted to sink into bed and knock it off, I knew I had to first get my scrubbing clothes into the washing machine. I grabbed an extra towel and made for the guest bathroom at the other end of the corridor since the washing machine was there too. But something besides the washing machine got my attention. It was a pair of boxers which weren't mine. For a moment I freaked out. I never wore that pair of boxers, never. I tried to calm my head and ignore the glaring facts that were staring at me in the face. Nora had finished in the bathroom and must have heard my footsteps walking across the corridor because soon the bedroom door flew open and she stood with her towel wrapped around her body. "Sebastian," she cried, "how and when did you come home?" "Through the chimney," I said, faking a smile but burning with a billion questions inside. Questions that needed immediate answers. Questions that would save or destroy our relationship. "Wait a second, honey, who owns this?" I asked casually, raising the boxers for her to see. I noticed her gasp in shock as she struggled to put her thoughts together. This was when I knew I had lost the relationship. I'd never felt the kind of heartbreak I felt in that minute since my life began. "Oh, those," she said, I guess they belong to Drake?" "Drake? Yeah, he was here last night to check out the basement and all that. And I think he must have forgotten it after he had a shower." "Oh, that's fine," I said, trying to make the moment easier for her. I quickly turned and got into the bathroom and turned on the shower even before I took off my clothes. Everything was wrong with the answer she had given. Everything. For Drake was much bigger than the slim pair of boxers I held. He also couldn't have come back to inspect the basement because he did that while I was at home during the day yesterday. And I personally dropped him off before going to work. And finally, the scent of the cologne on that pair of boxers was strong and unmistakable. Somehow in the midst of it all, I chuckled. Could this have been the reason why he called in absent? Could this have been why Nora was always taking some days and nights off for her alone time? For how long had I been played on? By that time I was done. I decided I was going to walk away from her, but not without letting her have her teachable moments. That moment, thankfully, came within the week. A few days later, I woke up at night with a horrible feeling. My instincts might not always be right, but that night I knew beyond all doubt that something was wrong. I couldn't tell what it was. I checked the time and it was 4 a.m. I just had this horrible feeling of everything not being all right. Nora was not on the bed and she wasn't in the bathroom either. But her phone was on the pillow. She never went anywhere without it. So, why now? I picked up her phone, but it was locked. After serious brainstorming, I figured out the passcode. To say the least, I was baffled by the chat which was left on the screen. It was with the contact saved as Mom. I decided to follow through. My heart raced as I saw firsthand the depth of foolery I was in. I typed out the contact on my phone, and before I could complete it, Frank's name came up. I checked again, and it matched. I got to the bottom of the conversation but could not believe what I saw. I quietly walked downstairs and went towards the basements. Sure enough, as I approached, I could hear coming from the basement quiet moans of Nora and a masculine voice, as well as the accompanying sounds which proved what they were doing. I burned with such anger I'd never felt before. Standing in the shadows of the entrance door, I watched in pain as I was betrayed by the closest people in my life. They were too busy to see me, but their clothes were out the door. Then a thought occurred to me. I quietly shut the door, which happened to be the only entrance from inside, and locked it. Picking up their clothes, I headed into my room, took a brief shower, and left for work earlier than normal. I also found Frank's phone in his pants pocket and took it with me to work. Then I called Drake, Nora's brother. "Hey, Drake," I said, "do you think you and your team could start the job in the basement this morning?" "Yeah, sure," he said. I was feeling super restless, and sure enough, Frank did not report for duty. How could he? He was stuck in my basement. 2 hours later I got the call I was anticipating. Nora's brother called me and sounded like he was hyperventilating. He and his team had found stark naked Nora and Frank in the basement trying to take cover from him and the team behind a beam. I listened silently as he kept going on about what a hoe his sister was and how embarrassed he was made out to be in front of his team, who were all local men who knew him and his family dearly. I could hear Nora frantically crying out about something in the background. He started apologizing profusely to me and said that he and his guys kicked butt-naked Frank out into the street. The aftermath was spectacular. Butt-naked Frank was arrested for public flashing, as one of my neighbors reported him. He also made it to the local news. My coworkers and I watched him and his naked arse get arrested on breaking news on our TV. Needless to say, he was indefinitely suspended from work. As for Nora, well, my Bill's Good team made sure the word spread around the town like wildfire. The scrutiny was so much, I heard she quit her job and became a shut-in at her parents' place for months to follow. What happened afterward? I have no idea. Maybe she's still living in her parents' basement and screwing dudes secretly. Somehow my coworkers were able to put two and two together and were extremely sympathetic to me, which felt nice. I took a few days off and packed all of Nora's stuff and called Bill to ask her to pick them up. One day when I returned home, her stuff was gone. She never attempted to contact me ever again. And like that, she was gone from my life. And I wish I could say I cared, but I didn't. There was just so much more to look forward to in life.